Robert Schumann's life wasn't easy. From an early age, he had this depression and he had occasional voices, and there were moments throughout his life, from his 20s on, that he felt this way, and he often thought of committing suicide. It shows in his music, too, especially the later music. Some of it is very inconsistent. Schumann was looking towards becoming music director of an orchestra. He received the invitation to be the music director in Dusseldorf. He had already composed 2 symphonies. He had done the first version of what became the 4th symphony, and now he's working on the 3rd symphony. The order of symphonies is always interesting. For example, Beethoven's 5 piano concertos, the first one was written second, and the second was written first. But they were published in the opposite way. Same thing with Schumann's symphonies. His 4th symphony was written first, then the 3rd, but then he revised the 4th, so the 4th was published after the 3rd, and so forth. Schumann's 3rd symphony is called the Rhenish, or the Rhine Symphony. The Rhine was important in Schumann's life on many levels. In fact, he tried to kill himself by throwing himself into the Rhine. The Rhenish Symphony was written during his time in Dusseldorf and inspired by a trip to the Cologne Cathedral. At that time, it wasn't finished, but it was magnificent. And that had a tremendous impact on them. And this symphony, of course, was to a large extent inspired by a trip that Clara and Robert made in 1850 on the Rhine. The first movement has one of those long, extended, gorgeous Schumann melodies. It is so beautiful. The opposite of the Beethoven 5th motive, it goes on. It has a great deal of rhythmic ambiguity, which means even though it may be written in 3, sometimes it sounds like it's played in groups of 2s. And this ambiguity of rhythm made it actually more interesting. And eventually, of course, it would always fit into place. Mozart did this. Beethoven did this. They all did. But Schumann did it in a remarkable way. And this melody just soars so beautifully. And it gets repeated. Towards the end of the melody, he has a little coda, which becomes important as we go later on into the movement. After that, he repeats the same material again, and this time he has the horns soaring in the middle of the orchestra. The second theme is wistful and light and soft. It's first stated by the woodwinds, then the strings, then the woodwinds join in again. It goes back to the initial first theme. This is a typical sonata allegro form. We've talked about it before. The exposition, the first theme, the contrasting second theme, and then sometimes that whole section is repeated. In Schumann's case, it isn't. And then he moves to the development section. And sometimes people call it a fantasy because the composers are using their imagination. And what Schumann does is he uses all the themes in constantly evolving way. As glorious as the beginning is, and as heroic as it sounds, during this development section, it is at times very dark and somewhat uncertain. Then, of course, he inserts the initial material, and at one point he has this great section for the horns where the orchestra makes a crescendo and then it disappears, and the strings are playing fast, tremolo, pianissimo, and the horns playing fortissimo, play this melody while everybody's in the background. Trumpet joins in, and the horns joins in, and then boom, we're into the recapitulation. Not dissimilar from Beethoven, even though this is a very quick sonata allegro form, the coda is quite extended, and Schumann does a tremendous amount of contrast, especially dynamically, with a theme being played forte and then a quick response piano. And it ends in a very heroic nature, again, with the horns and trumpets leading the orchestra. The second movement was initially called Morning on the Rhine. But like so many composers, he eliminated the title. And he felt, oh, the music should stand for itself. It shouldn't need a title. But these days, it's always interesting for us. Not that we're going to listen to this music and say, oh, I can see the Rhine River moving along. I mean, I certainly don't see that. But I could see that one might see that. Anyway, it does help us with the kind of ebb and flow of the way the movement should sound. after the first theme, quite beautiful and repeated a few times, then there's this absolutely charming little section with a bunch of short notes. It's like a little fugue. Each voice comes in separately, coming in, and you have the bassoon, and you have the cellos, then you have the violins, the violas, and you have oboe. Everyone jumping in at different times with this staccato figure. So we have the first section, which is the Rhine melody. Then we have these short little notes and a little fugue. And then he combines a chorale for the winds and horns with the short notes. So the short notes become the accompaniment of this chorale section. After that, he leads us back to the recapitulation, or the beginning of this absolutely magnificent movement. And a little coda comes it to an end. The third movement is a gorgeous slow movement. It's a song. It's lyrical. It's beautiful. It's so typical of Schumann's ability to write an absolutely gorgeous melody. It's played by the clarinets and bassoons. It's accompanied by the violas. And even though the music is slow, it keeps it flowing, not dissimilar from the Bruch movement of the Beethoven Sixth. So you don't even notice that the violas are playing these little notes, but it gives a feeling of forward motion, even though it's a very beautiful, soft song that the clarinets and bassoons sing. When this beautiful theme comes to an end, there's this passage of rising four notes in the violins, which is kind of a response to that. And eventually, Schumann combines that four-note passage with the melody of the clarinets. There is a second theme group, which is again like a little chorale. This time the chorale is played by bassoons and violas. We still have that undulating passage. This time the cellos do it. First the solo cello, and later the whole cello section. Repeat the same material of those four ascending notes in the violin, and we bring the clarinet theme back in again. and the chorale theme comes back in. I mean, it's very economical in the sense that there are basically three ideas, but the way he develops those ideas is absolutely genius and glorious. The fourth movement is the solemn ceremony. When Clara and Robert went to the Cologne Cathedral, there was someone becoming a cardinal, and there was a great ceremony, and they witnessed this ceremony. And that ceremony was the inspiration for this incredible chorale, the solemn chorale written for the trombones and horns. The trombone part goes very high, played almost always on the alto trombone. The alto trombone is used, the tenor trombone, the bass trombone. They have different sounds, the alto being a little smaller, medium, and large. The bell size of the instrument changes, the bore size, in other words, the pipe that they play into changes, the size of the mouthpiece changes from smaller to bigger. These days, we usually use two tenors and a bass. But when we play music like this, which is written for an alto trombone with a little brighter, smaller sound, the solo trombone player almost always will play an alto trombone. The whole movement is based on this chorale theme, which actually will come back again in the last movement. So after the initial statement by the trombones and horns, you'll hear it played by the violins, and then eventually it goes into a faster section, which sounds as if it were the same melody, but just in a more condensed way. It isn't quite, but it is similar, and it really gives a nice variety to this chorale. Towards the end of the movement, there's this climactic brass fanfare led by the trumpets and also by the woodwinds. And it's a beautiful moment where the woodwinds and brass have this fanfare. And you can see the color change. So you have woodwinds and brass, let's call that a bronze color, loud, and then the same chord is played by the strings. Let's call it dark brown, and it has this beautiful, soft, warm sound. Then this fanfare comes in even louder. And again, the response to it is this beautiful dark brown of the strings. And it ends in a very poignant way. Finally, it comes to the fifth movement. Obviously, 5 movements, that's unusual. People weren't writing 5-movement symphonies. But Schumann did. And the fifth movement starts out with a wonderful, simple melody. And he writes dolce. Dolce means sweetly. It's usually played in a kind of joyous way. He didn't write that. He wrote it without any staccato marks, without any marks to say you should play short. The second half of this melody is written with the staccato marks, is more angular and lighter and more effervescent, more joyous in a sense. And this juxtaposition of these two ideas, this sweet dolce idea and this joyous idea, permeates the whole beginning of this movement. The second theme does the same idea of a long, contrasting theme with occasional short notes, but he's always bringing you back and forth. The development section is quite extensive. Schumann had tremendous imagination, and he was able to combine this kind of dolce with the kind of staccato sections, the short notes, and it works really quite remarkably well. Finally, the initial theme comes back with the strings playing tremolo and aggressively and the horns answering the theme, but it comes back quite loudly now. So in other words, instead of being this dolce melody, it is an aggressive melody. And again, he brings back the second theme in the original key. Now, what's most interesting, obviously, as we've seen Beethoven develop, is the coda. So the whole ending in this is fantastic. It starts with a glorious fanfare in the brass, with the strings answering, and then the strings joining into that fanfare. And then the whole end is based on the chorale theme from the fourth movement. If I didn't tell you that, and now show it to you, you wouldn't even notice probably. But in the back of our minds, we hear that, and there's a certain familiarity. It makes us feel very happy and content in hearing the music, because it seems to make sense to us somehow. And this ends in a fabulous way with a tremendous activity by the full orchestra, and the horns with their fanfares that we hear throughout, and the brass, to be one of the great masterpieces, I think, of middle 19th century symphonic music.